Hey guys and girls, how you going? Mark Hummer here, of course, and we're going to talk a little bit about some Nikon equipment, particularly some lenses and their functionality, and very much in harmony with my new camera, which is the Nikon Z FC. So I'm using that to film right now. Right now I have it about 2 meters from me, and I've got the zoom on, that is the 16 to 50, what is it, the 3.5 to 5.6, or 6.3 I should say. So it's a very excellent unit, very versatile and a high quality unit. It gives beautiful imagery, razor sharp pretty much in every aspect, and I really like the lens. I think it's a great holiday travel lens and very versatile. So right now I'm shooting the video with it, and that's because I'm trying to demonstrate various 28mm focal lengths. So right now, as it's a zoom lens, I can choose a various focal length, and I've chosen 28mm. And I'm going to run all my lenses that are available at 28mm systematically through the camera and show you the different looks that they give. Now, very much, often they're very similar. It's 28mm, it's going to be all set at 2.8 where possible, and it's of course going to be a very similar look. But the point of the exercise is really showing you how versatile that 28mm focal range is, how it looks and its proportions, the aspect and so on, and also how good the 2.8 focal length is. So right now I'm shooting at I think it's f4.5. 4.5 on the zoom, because that's simply as wide as it goes. But it gives us a great starting point. So by shooting it at 4.5 at 28mm, then what that does for us is it empowers us to then give a ballpark figure to see how much better the other lenses are. So we have a variety of lenses I'm going to use besides that zoom, and one of them of course is the kit lens, the little pancake one here, which is a prime lens, and that's prime at 28mm. So when I'm talking 28mm here, I am talking about 28 as a full frame lens. Then I will be using also here I have the 24 to 70 2.8 lens. So I can have that at 2.8 and I can just elect to shoot it at 28mm in that focal range it has. And here I have also a older style Nikon lens, but still very, very capable. It's the 17 to 35mm full frame 2.8 lens, and it's an excellent lens, old D series lens, but it has of course in it the suitable motors to operate with the Z system to get full functionality of the focus system. So we'll autofocus quite brilliantly. I've done a test video with this where I was out in the veranda some months ago, and I illustrated it there. So I know it does work, but I'll show it to you in this little controlled environment. So it's very interesting that I'll show you that also at 28mm. And the point of all this is really here to illustrate that you can use pretty much any style of lens you like, whether it be a prime, a zoom, or even an old style D series lens here, and they all work very well at that focal range. So I'll run you through them and so you can get an actual impression of how they all look, and to confirm that yes, they do work, and they work great. Why am I choosing 28mm? Well, 28mm is just an excellent focal length for this illustration here, where I'm doing a YouTube style video in a room where I've got a controlled environment. I can elect the camera being about 2 meters, which it is, away from me, and using the a flip out screen that the camera has, it's very excellent for being able to establish composition and checking my focus. So when I look at that monitor, it's a very small monitor on that camera. It's only 3 inches wide. But at 2 meters away, of course, I can still make out very well the composition. I can see the record button illuminated, so I know it is recording, and I can see my composition, and of course, very importantly, I can see the little yellow box over my eye, because I've got it on human eye detect on widescreen, and I can tell exactly that I am in focus at any given stage, which is very confidence reassuring. So what really we're doing is we're sampling out how this FC camera and its flip out screen works in the environment of a YouTube video, and that can also be applicable to any vlogging you may be doing as well. So if you want to just have a quick setup of a camera where you can flip out the screen, press record and make some video footage straight away, well, that's what I'm sort of sampling now. So yes, I've got a perfect environment and great lighting and all that as well, but the point of not is just that lighting. It's more a question of how quickly we can set up the camera and run, and what does it look like, and what are the better focal lengths and the f-stops to use. So right now for sound, for example, I'm using, as you can see, a little lav mic here on my chest. Fortunately, it disguises very well on the black shirt, so it's almost invisible, but that's handy for me. The reason I'm wearing a jumper, of course, is quite cool. So I live in Queensland, where it's generally warm, but this is a winter's morning and it's quite cool. So I put a jumper on to keep myself cozy, and the black one, of course, hides the mic too, which is convenient. So what am I running it with? Well, I'm not running my usual system on the sound aspect. What I usually do is I have my receiver transmitter system from Deity, and I'll plug the transmitter and receiver to the camera on myself and use a wireless system. But that's, again, this is like too much rigging up. I'm trying to keep this system as simple and fast as possible. So I've really just got now this lav mic and an extension cable plugged straight into the camera. So I'm now using the preamp in the camera, which probably would degrade the sound quality overall a little bit, but at the same time still it's fast and quick and efficient. So it'll certainly do an adequate job of the sound, but it won't necessarily be as perfect as a professional system, but it is quick to set up, and that's important. So it's just plug and play then, really. So that's really cool. At the moment I've got the sound setting at halfway mark, so it's 10 out of 20 using the preamp to get the volume correct. So that's very handy and convenient. And another feature on this camera, some things I didn't get to tell you in my last video, was such as this, that when I bought the kit, it came with this handy little remote unit. So the remote's actually really cool. It's really, look, it doesn't do anything particularly different than if you're using your mobile phone and you use the SnapBridge app. It's really no different to that, other than it's a little bit lighter, quicker and easier to transport and utilize around. And if you're using your phone with the SnapBridge app, yes, it does work very efficiently and excellent. It's quite good. And also you get a little screen as well close by to check all your details, so that's very good for visibility. But the issue is then you're not able to use your phone for anything. So if you wanted to, say, set up your phone as a B-roll camera, for example, as a backup, you could. But if you're using SnapBridge app, then that's not so easy or convenient, is it? So it frees up your phone. You don't have to worry about using it at all. You can actually turn it off in the middle of a video if you need now, and you don't get any interruptions, which is also very handy. So having, as say, this little, and it is an official Nikon remote that came with it. It was free of charge. It was like a bonus extra in the kit I bought. It is very handy because it gives you features such as you can record, stop and start record, and you've got various little wheel of scrolling to go through the various features of the camera and have a look at previews and photo modes and all sorts of things. So it's a little cool little setup, and I just thought I'd encourage anybody who can get a hold of one of these to do so, particularly if you're into the on-the-spot videography. It's excellent to be able to start and stop things without getting up and down off your seat to start and check the camera. And of course you can always see that it's recording, so you know you've activated it well. So yeah, the remote is actually a great little feature. If you can get a hold of one, I encourage you to do so. If you're fortunate enough to get one with the kit, then you've done really well. But either way, a great little feature if you can find one. I was fortunate enough to get one with my kit. It was a free bonus, as I say. So I use that to start the recording now, and I use it to conclude it. And every time I need to get up and now change a lens on the camera to illustrate that, I can stop it before I even get up, and I can make sure that when I come back I'm exactly where I started from. So it just makes life a little easier. So getting back to the test in general, I've spoken about the sound and the little extra features you get. Just before I do the video demo, I'll just mention one other little interesting thing, and that was I was talking about with the camera, I couldn't get the USB to download directly to my computer. I had to keep pulling the chip in and out, and I thought that was a little frustrating. I like the Z system that I had with the Z7 and Z6, where I could just plug in a USB cable, go direct to the computer, and not have to pull the chips out to download files and videos. Well, even though I haven't resolved that aspect of it yet, and I'm sure it's just a question of getting the correct cable, because I believe it is doable. You've just got to get the USB-C, I think it is a 3.2 cable. That's the model, and I don't have that one yet. I've just got the old standard cables and 3.0 ones, and I don't think they're compatible. So that might be the issue. It's more a question of the correct cable than it is the camera's functionality. So I'm hunting around on the interwebs to try and find one of those, and yet I haven't been successful. I'm sure they exist somewhere, but I just haven't been able to stumble across one. So if I do find one, I'll link a source and everything to it, and my next video will have a link to that cable. But speaking of cables and supplies and power, etc., there is something that I did find work, and I want to run that through you just so you understand, because this is actually a very cool feature with a camera that has such a small little battery and such a short life. So here I have a big power pack. Now this one here is a core cell, and it's a very large one, as you can see. It's about 10 times the size of a traditional Nikon EL15C battery in power ability. Now here I have a very high quality cable as well. It's a USB-C to USB-C cable, and I find that when I plug this in to this power unit and plug that into the camera, it does actually power the camera. It not only charges the battery within, but more importantly what it's doing is it's empowering the camera. And this will run the camera. If I put this in a little bag like this here and a little sling into the tripod and connect it, I could run that camera all day and never have to change a battery. such as the power that this contains. So this sort of a feature that if you're doing a lot of video in a day, that'd be an excellent option to have with you for such a camera as the ZFC, where the batteries just don't last as long as you may wish them to. So rather than struggle and having 5 batteries with you, just buy a proper battery pack with a decent quality cable, and you'll be able to sync that together and then run your camera all day or as much as you wish without any stress. So this is another little option that I just wanted to run you through to say that's worthy getting if you have the ZFC camera. Now I keep mine in a little pouch here just to keep everything clean and together. I don't like to lose that cable because the actual getting the correct cable, and that being a very high quality USB-C cable, makes a big difference in its operation, power transfer. So I just wanted to run you through that. I thought that was pretty cool. The other thing I wanted to talk about, we are talking about lenses today, and this is relevant to lenses, is this little one here. I was demonstrating this lens to you guys not long ago, and I was saying how it functionality is pretty good. But the thing I didn't like about it, and this of course is the 40mm Z lens, the f2. Now it's a little like kit lens, plastic, has a plastic mount, it's on the budget side of things, but I was very attracted to it initially because it was a 40mm full frame focal length, which I could use on my Z7 if I wanted to, because it's a full frame lens. But on the ZFC, of course, it was about a 60mm, and I thought at f2, wow, that'd be great for having it as a portrait lens on the ZFC camera. However, as much as it does work very well, I didn't like the softness that it had at f2. And this is something that I've heard a lot of other YouTubers say, that it's not unusable, right? It is actually a quality and decent image, but it's just not what I'm used to. I think I'm a little bit spoiled rotten. I'm a guy who has all the pro-level glass, the big S-line lenses. You know, I'll buy a prime like this one, the 50 f1.2, and it's $3,500, and I don't think much of it. So I'm just a bit spoiled for choice as far as having really high-quality prime portrait lenses. So I just found that this didn't quite live up to my expectations, but then that's probably just me. So what I did is I put it online and sold it. And this is actually going now away. I won't be having this lens any longer. I say not because it doesn't function or it's rubbish, it's simply because it doesn't live up to my expectations and my needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack it away in its original box. And as I say, it's already sold. So some other lovely person will be able to benefit from that lens and use it to their satisfaction. And let me tell you, it does work very well. Anything from say 2.5, 2.8 up, it's fantastic. I just, however, bought it to use specifically at f2, and I find it's just not quite adequate at that. So that one's going bye-bye, and it's already sold. Now, funny enough, I put that thing online on eBay yesterday, and within half an hour it was sold. Yes, I'm putting it up online, and I'm just checking some other things on my computer. The phone goes off, it was sold in 30 minutes. So that's how quickly it sold. And I find that a lot with a lot of Nikon products. You can buy a Nikon lens or camera, and within hours the things are sold if you put them on a reasonable price. So I paid $320 for that lens, Australian, and when I went to sell it, I sold it for $295. So as far as I'm concerned, I didn't lose any significant money, so it was no loss on my part. But that one's going bye-bye now, and someone else will benefit from that. And what I'm going to buy to replace it is the 50mm 1.8S lens. Now that's a full frame lens at 50mm, so on this camera here it'll be a 75mm equivalent. And at 1.8, that'll be a nice portrait lens. So something I did want to mention about the portrait lenses, or any lens for a matter, is when you transfer one, that is say a full frame lens, and you go from this one here, which is a 2.8 version, and you put it on a crop sensor camera, we understand that the focal length changes. So this 28 will be similar to what a 42 would be on a full frame lens. So you've got to do a bit of maths as far as that goes and just do the calculation. Now many times that can be an advantage. Sometimes you want a longer focal length, so that can be quite convenient. And if you've got the two cameras, if you've got a full frame and you need a wider angle, just put it on your full frame camera, and then you've got the 28mm. Put it on your crop sensor camera, it's 42mm. That can be useful. It's like having two lenses in the one. The other factor is, though, you'll also maybe lose a little bit in your light and what would appear to be your aperture. But what I will say about this, though, and to keep this fair, is people will often say, oh yeah, but it's a 1.8 lens isn't a 1.8 lens when you put it on the crop sensor camera, then it's like a 2.5 or a 2.8 or something. Well, let's be realistic on this. What happens is, because you put it on a crop sensor camera, you get a longer focal length, yes? You get a longer focal length, you also get a shallower depth of field. That's just the science of the process. So what happens there is you may technically lose a little bit in your aperture, but what you gain is in the compression and advantage with a longer focal length and a shallower depth of field. So the only thing you're really losing when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of it is a little bit of brightness. And of course that just means increase your ISO 100 or 2. So 100 ISO or 200 ISO increase to balance that out is insignificant in the picture quality and makes basically no difference. So don't be concerned that you're compromising excessively by bringing a full frame prime onto a crop sensor camera and thinking you're making all these compromises. Actually, the way I look at it, it's often an advantage. So I think the advantage of having a longer reach and therefore a better compression and a slightly shallower depth of field is much better than any loss of light that you might gain, which is pretty insignificant. And considering you're doing this mostly with primes anyway, they're very bright as they are, so it's really not much of an issue. In fact, on this lens here, for example, this is the 51.2, I carry around permanently on the end there a circular polarizing filter. Now, why do I have a dark circular polarizing filter on the prime? Because the damn thing is so bright that if you take this outside, it's near impossible to take a photo unless you're shooting at about 2/1000ths of a second. So I find with the filter on the top there, it just enables me to be a bit more flexible in the shutter speed and so on. So don't be concerned about brightness. They're usually way brighter than what you need, particularly outside if you're dealing with primes. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case anybody was thinking about their issues. I don't consider them issues, I just consider them options and choices. So getting back to the focal test range that we're going to do, as I say, right now it is on 28mm and this is the look you get. Now I'm not going to change the lighting in the room at all, but when I put the other lenses on, and these are all 2.8 lenses here, and right now I'm shooting at 4.5, obviously there's going to be a brightness difference. So as soon as I lose this 28mm configuration and I go into a 2.8, I'm going to stop down the ISO. So right now the ISO is I think on about 320. I'll stop it down to about 160. When I put these ones on, it should balance it out pretty much. I'll tell you the details when I get the configurations right. But this is, as I say, the zoom lens we're looking at now. It's a good ballpark figure. It's the 16 to 50 zoom kit lens, if you like, little silver pancake lens. It's set to 28mm. Now you might say, how do you know it's set to exactly 28mm equivalent? Well, that's easy. All you do is you take a photo. Take a photo and you have a look at the information data on the photo and it'll tell you whether it was exactly 27mm or 28 or 30mm. And once you've got it set to 28mm and it's correct, you leave it at that. So it's easy actually to check your focal on a zoom to get it exact. And that's what I did. So now I know it's on 28mm at 4.5. We're going to put some of these 2.8s on and see the look difference and see if there's any personality or character difference set at 28mm with these different lenses. Now these are of course all full frame lenses, so everything should look pretty much equal, just slight variation in maybe the resolution ability. Obviously something like a little kit lens should not necessarily be as sharp as this very professional lens here, the 2.8 zoom. And this one here, which is an older school lens at 2.8, might have a little bit more character to it in some way. Might be a little, the color shift might be a little bit different. Resolution might be micro detail different. But we'll go and see as we check out the images. Hey? So let's do our first swap and we'll start with the small kit prime lens, 2.8 28mm lens. See you in a second. So I was just showing you the remote. I just turned it on and off with the remote just then, so it's a very convenient little feature that. I love that. It's very handy. So now here we are, we're shooting again and recording, as I can see, with the 28mm 2.8 little pancake lens. So it's a great little lens. I have used this multiple times. Unlike the 40mm, this one's going nowhere. I love this little lens, and it's bright and sharp at the widest aperture, which is exactly all I expect of the lens. In fact, I reckon, if this marketed this lens instead as a 2.8 and they didn't try and make it an f2, they probably could have made it a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, pretty much like this silver one here, and it would have been a great seller and I would have been happy to keep it. But I just didn't like the feeling of almost like, this wasn't really a deception because it does shoot it to f2, but it just wasn't as good as f2 as they were marketing it as, so I was a bit disappointed. But here's the silver lens that I was using just previously, when I was doing all my waffling on about all the details of the camera, and that one works really well too. I'm very impressed with this for its versatility and capability. So that's a great little lens, but that's one now that we've finished with using. So now, as I say, this is the 28mm 2.8 little pancake lens, and I'm very happy and pleased with it. So what I've done is, in order to make it equal with the previous lens, we're shooting at 4.5, I've now dropped this one down to 2.8, so I'm imagining you're going to now notice a slight difference in the depth of field. It should be a little bit softer at the back of those fans, etc. And what also you should notice is that I've had to compensate with the ISO. So previously, because this was a little bit darker at 4.5, I had the ISO at 320. Now I've dropped the ISO down to 160, so I should have balanced it pretty close. I'll make minor corrections in post just to make sure that that all looks consistent footage, but I'm not going to fiddle around too much because this is a test sample on lenses. But just in case I made an error and I didn't pay enough attention and it's really bright on one lens and really darker on the other, I'll balance that out a little bit better in post. So this is the lens here and how it looks. So I hope you're enjoying that one. As I say, this lens is a very handsome lens. I love the look of the lens. I think it's a beautiful complement to the camera. Buying the retro style lens with a retro style camera is really a smart thing to do because it looks the part, it performs really well, and as I say, this one's a real keeper. I love this lens. So that's what we're looking at with this 28mm 2.8. I can see it's focusing beautifully. When I look at the screen, I can actually see the little yellow box all over my eye, and as you can see, if I'm moving around, it's still retaining me in focus. I can tell 100% that it is finding me in focus no matter where I go or what I do. So sorry, I know that moving around looks a bit odd and quirky, but I just wanted to illustrate that it is following me in focus, and I can actually check and see that it is following me too, which is really reassuring. So yeah, this one works great, and that's the image we're looking at. So I'll just hurry up and we'll move on a bit now to different lenses. So let's focus now. Well, what we'll use is this one here, which is the 24 to 70 2.8 S lens. And this is a brilliant lens. Like I've done most of my videos with my Z7 that I've done in this room, I've done with this lens. And it is a magnificent unit. There's nothing that's wrong with this lens. It performs beautifully. It does weigh quite a bit, so you know you're getting some value because it's quite a hefty unit. But the features and the quality of it is astounding. But of course you're paying for that. So this is about $3,000 to buy this one, whereas to buy that little pancake lens was $300. So you're going from a $300 lens to a $3,000 lens. Obviously you're going to expect a very good unit. But that doesn't deteriorate in any way from how well this one works. So for what it is, which is a cheap, affordable, lightweight prime, it's a fantastic lens, the 28mm 2.8 for the FC system. So here we are back again, and now we've got the 24 to 70 f2.8s very pro zoom lens on, and it's set to exactly 28mm. Now again, how do we know it's 28mm? Well, on the little gauge on the lens, as you're rotating the zoom around, you can see it says 28, but that's not very accurate all the time. Fortunately, what we have is the little display button. So when you put the display button on, you can then see it digitally, and I'll illustrate it with this lens here. This lens here has a little display monitor here and a display button, and when you press that and it's all activated, it'll come up with the number of exactly the focal length that it is. And when you set it and you check with the display button, it says exactly 28mm. So I know we're on 28mm, the camera is all set at 2.8, so I know that's right. And now we're filming with that lens now. So maybe it's a little bit brighter than the other prime, I don't know, we'll soon compare and see ourselves, but I'm sure the video quality is quite excellent. Again, I'm just going to go through the routine of telling you that I can see myself in the monitor. I know the composition is good. If it's 2 meters away, it's about the maximum length you're going to want this camera away if you're filming yourself and you need to see the monitor, because the monitor is quite small. So unlike some big, like an Atmos Ninja monitor or my 7-inch monitor I have, my aperture one, this was only a 3-inch monitor, and in order to get any real value out of the monitor's use to actually see yourself and compose, you don't want the camera really much further than about 2 meters away from you. Right now that's pretty much exactly what that is. So at 2 meters away, I can see the screen really well. I can see the record button illuminating in the corner of the screen. I can check and see it's at f2.8. I can see that the power is on, etc. And so that's very useful to me. So just illustrating here that this is the lens we were using previously. So it's the little 28mm 2.8 prime, and again it's the retro styling one suitable for the FC, and I think it's a brilliant lens, and I'm very pleased with this one. This is a great little lens and works extremely well. So that's the second one we're trying now. On the step of the way, you notice this is actually a little bit bigger than the zoom, which is sort of a bit funny when you think about it, because you think a zoom with all that versatility would actually be a bigger lens, but no, actually the zoom's actually smaller and more compact. So it must be due to the prime factor and the optical ability of it or something like that. But either way, it's a great package. It's still relatively small, and I'm very happy with its performance. So now, as I say, we're on the big lens now, the 24 to 70 2.8, which I know performs brilliantly. I have no doubt that it would be working well. It's probably one of my all-time favourite lenses for video because of its versatility and the confidence I have in the quality. So that's a great lens. And so let's just move around a bit and just check that it's finding me in focus and it's still following. Get as close as I can, get far back. I can see the yellow box there. It is definitely following me around, so I have no lack of confidence in the camera and the lens's ability together as a combo. That lens is very big on that camera, so I wouldn't say it looks necessarily appropriate, but it certainly works very well. So that's that lens there. I always knew that was going to be a good version. Let's get the surprise out of the way here. This is going to be the really exciting one, the one we're trying next, which is the 17 to 35 f2.8 D series lens. So that'll be exciting. I've got the FTZ adapter on it, and within 2 meters away from me, using a lav mic, it'll be very interesting to see if you hear any motor noise, because there is some motor noise with this, but I think at 2 meters away and having the microphone this close to me here in my chest and not on the camera, I reckon you won't hear the noise at all. I think if you had an on-camera mic, you would have problems, and that's why I never advise an on-camera mic. A, because it's too far away from you and you're not going to get great sound pickup, but secondly because it's right on top of the lens, and if the lens does make any noise or the camera makes noise, you're going to pick it up in the sound. So it's much better to have the mic on you or on your bench or very close to you and pointing at you, rather than have the microphone really picking up everything the camera's doing. So we're going to put it on, we're going to give it a trial, make sure it actually works and functions well on the FTZ. And then what we're going to do is check out also for any audio noise. So there'll be a period of time there where I just shut up for a change and you can actually hear the ambient noise and see if you can hear any sounds from the camera. So let's try that on next. That'll be the fun one. I'll be with you in just a second as I take these 24 to 70 off. Hey guys, how you going? So now I've got the 17 to 35 millimeter on, and that's going to be interesting to have a look at how that works as an old D lens. We'll see how its autofocus function works and if everything is going really well, and also if we can pick up any noise. Now my chair's squeaking a little bit as I move, so excuse that. Hopefully that's not the sound you're hearing. But what I wanted to show you was with this remote control, which I've been using to activate everything, you will notice it has a little on-off button here. And when you turn it off, of course, nothing will function. When you go to turn it back on, you'll see a little green light appear and it starts to flash. I hope you can pick that up. It'll flash for a few seconds, and then it'll go continuously green, which it just has now. When it goes continuously green, then it actually functions and you can use it. If you're haven't turned it on and you're pressing the buttons and nothing's going, it's because you haven't turned it on. And if of course you've been impatient, you've not waited for the light to actually go continuously green saying that it's operational, then it won't work either. So just be aware of that, not to be impatient with it. It does work very well. Just let it actually fire up and tune in. It's got a sync of course with the camera. So once you've of course got the synchronization going, then it's all fine. It's synced with the unit. It's great. But then just let it have a chance to actually sync with the camera before you're impatiently pressing buttons, and give it a chance to actually function. Other than that, it works great. So I'm very happy with it. So right now I've got the 17 to 35 2.8 pro level lens. This is back in the day, back in the 90s, when everything was just going from film to digital. And the lenses, of course, were excellent, and this was like a standard in the bag of almost every pro photographer. So it is a pro-level lens, you know that, because it has a gold ring around it. That's usually a dead giveaway. And the fact that it's a 2.8, for example. So it is a terrific lens. I've used this one for many, many years. I've had several models of it. There have been times when I've had it, sold it, thought I'd try something new, then come back to this because I just love the versatility of it. At the moment, there's nothing in the Nikon range that actually meets that 17 wide angle, as it were, to a 35mm perspective. So you've got a 14 to 30. It's not quite the same. It's a little wider, but of course it isn't a 2.8. And so that's the downside. And although the f4 14 to 30 zoom, which I've owned in the past, and I have owned it and used it for years, it was a very good lens, and it had the big attraction of that wide angle lens was that of course it had a great filter thread on it. So you're just putting on a, if I remember rightly, an 82mm filter, which is readily accessible. And of course you get to put any filter you liked on then, whether it be circular polarizer or ND filters. You want to do your long exposures. It was great to have a pretty much standard form filter just to screw on the front. Whereas if you're using that new 14 to 24 2.8 Pro lens, it's very expensive, but the downside is there's a massive filter on it. So can you buy a filter to put on it? Yes, you can. Is it extremely expensive, every filter, and awkward and annoying to bring around? Yes. So that's why I've never purchased that lens. Even though I have many pro level lenses from Nikon, that one to me is just not the perfect compromise for everything I need. This one, however, is really cool. So I like the fact it's a 2.8. Should I want a wider aperture, if you like, that's handy to have. Its build quality is brilliant. It's built like a tank. It's metal and glass and very little plastic and extremely sturdy. Sort of a lens that's going to last you a lifetime if you look after it. And also the fact I like about it is the filter thread. It has a 77mm filter thread, which is of course compatible with so many other lenses I have. So that's brilliant to carry 77mm filters around with you. If I'm taking my 70 to 200 out, the same filters as that I use on this one, well, that's very, very convenient. And even if I'm taking this one here and it uses an 82, I just need a step down ring and I can go from 77 to 82 and use the filters that I would bring with this one. So either way, it's very versatile and handy. So that's why I really love this lens, and I always seem to keep coming back to it, and I probably will do until Nikon bring out something like, maybe, I assume they'll eventually bring out a pro level, say 16 to 35 2.8, and when they bring out something like that, I'm going to be all over it, because that's going to be a great versatile lens. And until they do, this 17 to 35 is what I'm choosing. So yes, right now it's filming with me. We're just going to check about the focus. I can see the yellow box is following me around wherever I go. Yep, sticking to me like glue, so I'm very confident with that. That's terrific. In this sort of an environment, you could probably set manual focus anyway and just remain still, but I love the fact that I've got follow focus should I get up or down or move around. It works very well. I can't hear a damn thing. I'm just trying to be silent at the moment and listen to see if we're picking up anything from the lens noise at all, being that we are using the FTZ adapter. Yes, I can just pick up a slight, very, very subtle clicking sound, a little clunk, 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 but it's very soft and very modest. I doubt you can pick it up from the microphone. My ears can pick it up, but whether the microphone does or not, I'm not sure. You may or may not be able to hear that. It's very, very subtle. I think it's not the sort of thing that's going to be a deal breaker and stop you making a video. And that, of course, is providing the cameras a reasonable distance. This camera here right now is set at 2 meters away from me, and I don't believe that sound's going to be picked up at all. And if it is, it's going to be so subtle, you'll be straining to try and hear it, which means it's not intrusive. So having the microphone on me is a big advantage, because it's dominatingly, my voice is sort of taking over control there. No, really, it's almost unhearable, almost impossible to hear. You've got to really strain yourself to hear it. In fact, I think the creaks and groans from the chair are probably more noisy than the noise the lens is making. One thing I will tell you about this setup is when I went to put the FTZ adapter on the Nikon Z FC, because it is a very tiny body camera, the FTZ adapter was a little intrusive. I couldn't quite get it on the mount, on the Arco Swiss mount, so what I had to do is extend it by putting a second Arco Swiss mount to give me a bit more clearance from that little bulbous bulb in the bottom of the FTZ adapter. Now, of course, that doesn't have to be an issue, because now Nikon have got the FTZ Mark II, and that little bulb is removed and it's smooth and circular now at the base. That wouldn't be an issue. Unfortunately, I only have the old adapter, and I'm not going to be upgrading to the new adapter in a hurry, because I only have one D-series lens. Because I've only got one old GD series lens, it's not worth me buying multiple adapters. This one does the job, and the odd time I need it, I just put a secondary Arco Swiss adapter on my camera, and that'll do the job. Just gives me that extra little bit of gap to clearance it, to get it on the tripod should I need to. Because if you're hand holding the camera and you're not using a tripod, it makes no difference at all. Hand holdability, it's irrelevant. But for when you're using, for example, a tripod, yeah, it might be a bit of a nuisance. Just be aware you might need a second Arco Swiss plate just to give you that extra spacing. Other than that, it works fine. I'm very pleased with it. Or, of course, you have the option of the FTZ Mark II, and that eliminates that problem 100%. So you've got choices and options. For me, I'm just going to go with the secondary Arco Swiss plate. It's changed, of course, the height and perspective of everything. So what I did is I just dropped the tripod height down by about 1 centimetre just to compensate for that height. Now I don't know what sort of a change that's made. Maybe I've thrown the whole alignment with the other lenses out a little bit now, but I'm hoping it's not too bad. Getting 28mm on this exactly isn't too bad. I mean, you've got gauges on the lens that show you the ballpark figure where 28mm is, but again, what I say is you just simply take a photo at that focal length, and then you check the data on the back of the camera, and you'll see it's either shooting at 26, 27, 28, 29 mils, and when you get it at 28, you use that. So I must say, I'm finding it working really well. The image looks really good to me in the monitor. So when I look at that monitor, the image looks every bit as good as every other lens. So I think that's great. It seems to be right in the ballpark there. And the focusing seems to be smack on my eye and follow me really well. So yes, I'm very happy with how it's performing as a camera and as a package. So anyway, we'll compare this 28mm footage now. They're all being shot at 2.8, other than of course the little zoom, which of course doesn't do 2.8, but it does f3.5, I think I was using, or no, 4.5 I was using, sorry. And anyway, that gives us a good comparative framing, if nothing else. So let me know what you think, guys. If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about with the cameras or try out, I'm happy to do so. Right now you might hear a little bit of a croakiness in my voice. I have a mild chest infection, which makes me cough and breathe a little wheezily. I apologise for that, if that interferes with the sound quality too. So that's just me, though. It has nothing to do with the camera lenses or the equipment. So anyway, have a good day, guys, and I wish you all the best, and thank you for your time watching my videos.